What's good, y'all? It's your boy Treywrld, and we back with another reaction video. You feel me? Now today we got ugly belts, worst title designs. I ain't gonna lie, there have been a lot of bad title design in WWE. I ain't gonna lie. Like for instance, the one I can really name off the top of my head right now, the Crown Jewel title. That thing looks nasty. That thing looks, oh my god, like why does the title look so big? Like honestly, it will be a title that will be fit just for Big Show. Like real shit. Like I can only see Big Show having that title. Only see Big Show having that title. But yeah, man. Let me know in the comments what other titles do you really think that were ugly, or some of the better looking titles that you really like, or your personal favorite title. The link to the original video will always be in the description below. Without further ado, man, let's get into it.
There have been a lot of title belts throughout wrestling history, and of course a lot of these belts have been very eye-catching, with designs such as the Winged Eagle WWF title and the Big Gold Belt from WCW being amongst the most beloved by fans. But what about the flip side to this? What about the belts which stood out for being such an eyesore? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at right now, starting with the red and blue Universal titles. Yes, if the old Winged Eagle belt was loved by the previous generation of fans, then the reason for that was because it looked beautiful, like something the champion of a sport would proudly wear around his waist. Unfortunately though, as the years went on, we got rid of that design and eventually moved on to what we got with the Universal title design.
I don't know. Maybe it was just the red one. I mean, the both of the designs were kind of, they was kind of plain, and it's kind of ass. But if you really think about it, the red one was the worst one because, like, I think at the time Raw was just everywhere and anywhere, and like you really don't know what was going with the story on Raw, and it's just like Jesus Christ. It was a time, but at the same time, it's just like, God dang, man. So I think the red one more is worse than the blue one, to be honest.
Why were these belts such jarring colors? Well, because they needed to be able to shout very loudly about what brand they represented. Yes, Vince McMahon wanted fans to clearly know if the Universal title was being defended on Raw when it was held by Brock Lesnar or Seth Rollins, or if it was being defended on SmackDown when Roman Reigns was in the midst of his 1,316-day run with it, so he gave each belt their own color code. So it should come as no surprise that both of these belt designs were largely reviled by many fans, with the red one being the subject of particular vitriol when it was first unveiled during a match between Seth Rollins and Finn Balor at SummerSlam 2016. Fortunately though, in the years since then, the Universal title has been formally merged with the WWE title after Cody Rhodes won it at WrestleMania 40, meaning we don't have to worry about seeing its crazy color schemes on our screens anytime in the near future in either of its incarnations. But of course, the red and blue versions of the Universal title aren't the only ones which existed over the 8 years that belt was active. No, there was at one point a special customized version made for one of its holders, and that belt is our next entry as it happens. Yes, we're talking about the Fiend belt. Yes, the Fiend's customized version of the Universal title truly was ugly. But to be fair, it really was supposed to look.
Yeah, it was, because it fits Bray Wyatt's character. And it's just, oh man, I think rest in peace to Bray Wyatt, bro. Bray is most definitely a legend, and I feel like nobody can really do that. I know, and I know Bo Dallas, he's doing great, but it's like Bray was something else, and I would give anything to really see this man wrestle in person again, bro. Well, wrestle live again, because bro, I seen him one time when he came to Lafayette, and it's like, oh my god, that was so cool seeing him in person.
this way, as it was being carried by a horror movie villain-inspired character after all. What was so ugly about it exactly? Well, rather than have the WWE logo on the front of it, this one instead just had a big picture of the Fiend's face on it, with nothing else to really signify that it was the top prize on SmackDown at the time. Sure, horror fans may have enjoyed this one to an extent, as it certainly looked gruesome, and if you were a major fan of the Fiend gimmick, then you might have even been able to find something to like about his face being stretched out across the gold. But for most other fans, it was a disaster of a design. Thankfully though, the Fiend's version of the Universal title would at least be short-lived, as when he dropped it in February of 2020, it disappeared forever. With the same
Goldberg. Keep it going. I ain't got nothing to say.
Same cannot be said of our next entry, because back during the Attitude Era and the beginnings of the Ruthless Aggression Era, it lived on for several years in several different incarnations. What are we talking about this time? Why, the Hardcore title, of course. Now, you could argue that the whole point of the Hardcore title was that it was supposed to be ugly. After all, it was meant to represent the Hardcore division, a division which, in turn of the Millennium WWF, was all about weapons, plunder matches, and wild.
Yeah, I don't think the Hardcore title was ugly. The Hardcore title goes, the Hardcore got words. The Hardcore title goes crazy. Like, I don't, the Hardcore title goes crazy, bro. I don't understand. I wouldn't call. Let me know in the comments what y'all think, because the Hardcore title, I'm not tripping. The Hardcore title was great. It was nice. It was nice.
Brawls. But that doesn't change the fact that even if it was by design, it was still a very ugly belt. Sure, it may have been pretty at some point in time, as at some point this was actually a replica of the old Winged Eagle belt, with one of the most popular misconceptions out there being that it was the one Mr. Perfect so famously smashed up with a hammer on TV once. But by the time it made it back to television in November of 1998, it certainly wasn't pretty anymore. And that's because, as the myth surrounding its birth suggests, it was a belt which had been brutally broken and torn apart, with anything that had once been regal about it now being long gone. Still, even if it wasn't very nice to look at, the Hardcore title did become a regularly fought over possession during this era of WWF. Hell, over the course of its existence, it would actually change hands a full 231 times, with most of these title changes happening under 24/7 rules. In fact, so beloved would it be by some of the people who held it, at one point towards the end of its life, the Hardcore title even began to get some customized versions introduced, with two of the most notable of these being Tommy Dreamer's and Bradshaw's. Why were these so notable? Well, because they somehow looked even crazier than the original version. That's right, when the innovator of violence introduced his own version of the strap during the early 2000s, it would have a New York City license plate pasted over the front face plate. And when
hold on, go back.
2000s, it would have a New York.
Nah, see that? I ain't gonna lie, that's kind of nasty. That's kind of nasty. Yeah, I ain't messing. I don't know. I mean, I just ain't rocking with it. I don't know, man. I ain't rocking
New York City license plate pasted over the front face plate. And when Bradshaw did the same and around the same time,
I don't know, man.
his would have.
I don't know, man. I don't know, man. Those two, I ain't gonna lie, they not hidden. They not hidden.
Have a Texas flag. But then the division was very much in its death throes at this time, ready to be put out to pasture once and for all. Of course, once it was gone and the Hardcore title was gone along with it, there were still plenty of bad belt designs to come, with one of these being our next entry, the spiritual successor to the Hardcore title, the 24/7 title. Yes, it was back in May of 2019 that in an attempt to boost flatlining Raw ratings, Vince McMahon decided that the best way to get some interest back for that third hour of Raw was for it to serve as a stomping ground for a new version of the old Hardcore division. But this one wouldn't be called the Hardcore division. Rather, it would be called the far more PG-friendly 24/7 division, with its title being the 24/7 title. Why was it the 24/7 title? Well, like with the belt which preceded it, this one was going to be fought
It looked like a giant token, bro.
over under 24/7 rules, meaning that so long as you had a referee with you, you could challenge the champion for it at any time, in any place, even if that be somewhere like a golf course, a private jet, or a bathroom. And while this could have led to some fun moments, the belt's design never quite got over with audiences, as it was such an eyesore to look at. Yes, this new prize had a green leather strap with a copper penny centerpiece, with it looking similar to something you would have got at a Toys R Us back in the day. Not the kind of thing which should have been presented as an actual piece of hardware people wanted to fight over on TV.
Nah.
So perhaps it should come as little surprise then that pretty quickly this belt became something of a comedy title, with the majority of its existence seeing it be held by R-Truth and defended during comedy segments, which usually ended with him running away from the jobber crew of 205 Live or Main Event. Even the most hardcore of fans would struggle to defend this one, and when Triple H clearly saw the division wasn't getting over as initially intended, he'd deactivate the title and make sure it was gone forever, when the final champion Nikki Cross quite literally dumped it in the trash on an episode of Raw. But that somehow wasn't the only time WWE ever did copper penny designs for a title belt. No, years before, they'd do the exact—
No. I forgot about the tag titles. Oh man, I forgot about the tag titles, bro. Yeah, the tag titles look nasty. They look like right now, bro. You can see it. It look like pennies, bro. Oh my goodness.
same thing with our next entries, the WWE Tag Team titles from the 2010s. Yes, the Copper Tag Team titles were originally introduced back in August of 2010. And WWE had the best of intentions with this design, as they were going for something which was supposed to look like it was straight out of ancient Greece, complete with Spartan helmets on the front faceplate, the exact kind of thing the gladiators of old might have fought over. But in practice, we can all safely look back on it now and say that it looked like the tag team champions were wearing giant pennies around their waists. That's right, whether it was the Shield, the New Day, the Usos, or even the Rhodes brothers, all of the great tag team champions from that era had to be seen wearing this design at some point, and that understandably made them all look a little defense. This one truly was a Hall of Fame worthy bad design, one which is still maligned by many fans to this day, especially whenever people remember it once had its own red and blue brand specific versions too. Still, at least things have been rectified now, because as of 2024, a redesign has seen things look a lot better for the titles, with the World Tag Team Championships still having that circular design as before, but now in a far more beautiful way.
Right.
But enough about the men's titles for now, as they are not the only ones which have been bad at times over the years. No, there have been plenty of bad-looking women's belts too. And one of the most notable of these would be our next entry, that being the Divas title. Come on now, you all remember this one. It was the one that was often known as the butterfly belt on account of that butterfly style faceplate it had. Really, aside from just being a bad design, a big part of the reason this one is as disliked as it is today is because it was representative of a down period for women's wrestling. Yes, this was the period where women were not taken as seriously as they are today, and given how little care was given to the division by WWE management back then, it perhaps shouldn't come as any surprise that the design for the belt was given the same amount of time and attention. Seemingly then, this is how we ended up with the butterfly belt. Sure, there were talented women who held the Divas title during the years it was active, names like Natalya, AJ Lee, and Paige. But any hopes they had of being taken seriously as top-level stars on the level of the men were always hurt by the fact that this was the belt they had to carry around with them whenever they were on top of the division. Thankfully then, when things began to change for the women of WWE following the rise of the Four Horsewomen during the mid-2010s, a decision was made to change things up with the belt too. And that change was to get rid of the Divas branding and instead return it to being the women's division, where they would fight over a women's title, with the last holder of the old butterfly belt being Charlotte Flair. But that shouldn't suggest that the women's title hasn't had its fair share of bad designs over the years too. In fact, one of them is our next entry, the Lay Cool Split.
Oh my god, I remember this. That was ugly, bro. It's like the whole storyline was them. The whole storyline with them was just like, okay, so we both won the title, because I think it was I don't remember the match, but I'm thinking I might be wrong on this. I might be wrong. It's like they pinned the same person, or they pinned pinned the same team at the same time or something. I don't remember. And they both won the titles. I don't exactly remember the story, but I remember seeing the title. I remember seeing the title, and that shit looked ugly. Why is it just you gave them two straps? Just just gave them a broken title. Jeez.
Split version of the strap. That's right. In order to explain, let us first take you back to the summer of 2010. That was the point where there were two women's titles on the WWE roster, with one being the WWE Women's title and the other being the WWE Divas title. As time went on though, and Vince McMahon felt he didn't need more than one prize in the division, he decided to unify the two belts during a match between then champions Melina and Michelle McCool at Night of Champions on September 19th of that year. Who would win this one? Well, that would be Michelle McCool. But she wouldn't be the only one defending the now unified belt at this point. No, now she'd share the duty with her LayCool tag team partner, Layla. Why was that? Well, because Layla felt like, given how much she'd helped her partner to get the win, which saw her be a double champion, she deserved her part.
You know, maybe I should have let the video ran because, yeah, this makes more sense. But I was saying it was just totally wrong.
Part of the prize too. And this led to the pair getting into a backstage argument over who was the real champ then, with their subsequent tug of war over the belt seeing it be ripped in two. Yeah, you heard us right, the women's title was now broken into two separate pieces, one for each of the members of LayCool. So for the next couple of months, each time LayCool came down to the ring to defend their belt, both Michelle McCool and Layla would be carrying one half of the desecrated straps over their shoulders. Still, it could have been worse. It could have been the design of our next entry, another true wild design to come out of the PG era of WWE. What are we talking about this time? What else but Edge's Rated R spinner belt. Yes, while the spinner belt might be more closely associated with John Cena, at least that version was popular amongst a certain section of the audience. And that one certainly suited the superstar it was designed for specifically, with all its hip-hop culture-inspired elements included. When it came to Edge's version though, the one that he introduced in August of 2006 after winning it from Big Match John, the same couldn't be said. Why was that? Well, this version also spun, but when it did, it wasn't a WWE logo which was doing the spinning. No, it was a big Rated R logo instead. And yes, this was the point in that it was supposed to make you dislike it and want to boo it. Hell, the plan may have been to make fans miss the original John Cena spinner belt so much that when it finally came back, they'd begin to love it, but none of these changes the fact that it was a design most fans just didn't like. Sure,
yeah, when you see a spinner belt, you really think John Cena's, not Edge's, like, and there was just too much red in the middle, and it was like, nah, it's just, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work.
it may have only lasted around a month before Big Match John won the belt back and banished this away forever, but it says something about how wild looking it was that even now, this many years on, many fans still consider it one of the worst title designs in history. That's quite an achievement, especially when it's being directly compared to the spinner belt. Honestly, if we were to rank all the things that Edge had been responsible for throughout his wrestling career in a scale that has the tables, ladders, and chairs matches somewhere near the top, this would be close to the bottom, if not outright dead last. But Edge wasn't the only person who had their own ugly custom version of a world title made over the years. In fact, he wasn't even the only member of those iconic TLC matches who had this, because the same would happen with Jeff Hardy a few years later in 2010, though when it happened to him, it wouldn't be in WWE, rather it would be in TNA with his Immortal belt.
That Immortal belt looks so nasty. That Immortal belt, it looks like a glow in the, did it glow in the dark? I don't remember. That, bro.
Now we all know that Jeff Hardy is a very creative guy. It's been a big part of his appeal ever since he first became famous during the Attitude Era, in fact. After all, if you were an alternative kid back then, or in any other time period for that matter, then it's easy to identify with the unique guy who likes nothing more than to express himself in unique ways, be that through music, painting, or throwing his body around like a crash test dummy. Sure, calling the way he performed in some of his most insane matches art might seem wild at first glance, but there was certainly an artistry to what he did back then, and that artistry would continue once he left WWE behind and joined the TNA roster. That said, For as much as we'd come to expect weird things from the charismatic Enigma at this point, the one thing we didn't expect from him was that he'd get one of the strangest looking custom title belt designs when he finally won the big one down in the Impact Zone in 2010. But then maybe we shouldn't have been surprised about this, because for as much as we love Jeff, his ideas can be pretty out there sometimes, and they don't always hit a home run. What was the design
Because you be on that shit.
of this one exactly? Well, it was some spiky, pointed design that had the visage of Brother Nero on the front faceplate, though to be honest, we can't be 100% sure of that, as it isn't exactly a great likeness of him. Then, of course, there's the color of the strap, with this being purple, with this only adding on to the strangeness of this design. Sure, like with the Rated R spinner belt, you could argue that this one was meant to get heel heat, as it came during a period when the charismatic Enigma had just been inducted into the ranks of the heel group Immortal, alongside the likes of Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan, and Jeff Jarrett, with this being why it's so commonly known as the Immortal title. But again, like with the Rated R spinner belt, that doesn't change the fact that it's still an eyesore of a design.
Yeah.
And it's not as if TNA didn't have the ability to make a better design at the time. No, back in 2010, the wealthy Carter family owned the promotion, so there really is no excuse in that respect. One promotion we can somewhat excuse for making a cheap-looking title, however, is our next subject, as it's in Extreme Championship Wrestling, everyone's favorite low-budget underdog, that we find another bad belt design, that of the original FTW title. Now, modern wrestling fans will probably be more aware of the FTW title today as being an unsanctioned belt, which was, up until recently, fought over in AEW, with the man who held it the most probably being Hook. But years before it ever got a second life down in Jacksonville, the FTW title was first created by Hook's father, current AEW commentator, Taz. Why had Taz created a belt for himself? Well, after growing frustrated that he'd been unable to challenge Shane Douglas for the ECW World title following Douglas's injury, the Human Suplex Machine decided that if he couldn't win the official belt, then he'd just make an unofficial one for himself. And that's what led to him creating the FTW title. The only problem with the FTW title, though, was that, apart from never being officially sanctioned by ECW, it was ugly to look at. And that was because it was about as cheap looking as they came, with it basically seeming to be some kind of replica version of the Winged Eagle belt, complete with a bright orange strap. And yes, the orange did serve a purpose, as it was the color most associated with Taz, but it was still garish nonetheless. Of course, the ugliness of the belt very well could have been a part of the design here, and not in the sense that it was supposed to get heel heat. No, we can't rule out the idea that it was grimy and ugly looking specifically because that was what ECW was. So if it didn't look like something you would get in WWF or WCW, that was okay, as this was exactly at what fans of Extreme Championship Wrestling wanted. But while we can give the original FTW title a pass for not looking great, as it was very possibly supposed to be that way, the same can't be said for our next entry. No, when it came to those early days of NXT as a true developmental league, they almost certainly wanted a title which made them look like they were prestigious. And that was not something we quite got with the original NXT title. Yes, while the NXT title has looked great over the years, with the black and gold version being
that one. That's what I'm thinking of. That's the one I'm thinking of. Think of that one, not that one. Yeah, okay. Because I was like, huh? What? I don't think so, but the original, yeah. That one.
Particularly well liked by audiences. It took a while for WWE to figure out the design of it, but then to be fair to them, back when it was first introduced in 2012, the creative team were probably spread thin already, trying to make sure the brand successfully moved over from the game show incarnation into something that would be more sustainable as a place for wrestlers to learn before eventually moving up to the main roster. And that was how, rather than get one of the better versions that we're all familiar with today, when Seth Rollins became the inaugural NXT World Champion on July 26th of that year, he'd be given something which, to put it nicely, wasn't exactly pretty to look at. No, while it did have the NXT logo right there front and center as later versions would, the rest of the design left a lot to be desired. And as if that weren't bad enough, there was also the fact that rather than
it honestly, to me, it just felt like it's missing something. And I think that little back part that we have in the one now is the one is the part that was kind of missing. Because, it just looks unfinished. That's it.
have some cool side plates placed along the strap to make up for the center of the title, All we got here were a bunch of square WWE logos, with there being no nameplate at all to celebrate whoever was holding the title at the time. Thankfully though, when it comes to the top prize in NXT, it would get far better designs as the years went on and the brand started to take off in popularity, and so for this reason we can safely say today that it's been redeemed. That said, none of this takes away from the fact that the original design wasn't the best. But then, we guess the same could be said about every title belt we've looked at today, as they're all amongst the worst designs that wrestling has ever given us.
Alright, man. Yeah, you know, W video, man. Again, original video will always be in the original video will always be in the link description. The original video will always be in the description below. Make sure you like, subscribe, again, comment. What belt do you think was the worst to you, or what was your favorite belt? What is your favorite belt? Oh, I'm sorry, I keep saying belt. Title. I am so wrong. As a wrestling fan, I should not be saying belt. I mean title. But yeah, again, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and turn on the post notifications so you always know whenever I post a video that bit me on my eyebrow. I feel it, and it just. And I'll see y'all in the next one, man. Peace.